1992 was a busy year for the film industry, seeing the release of such hits as Batman Returns, Home Alone 2, Reservoir Dogs, Unforgiven, My Cousin Vinny, Aladdin, Wayne's World, A Few Good Men, and White Men Can't Jump. More than a few excellent albums were released this year, such as Dirt by Alice in Chains, Countdown to Extinction by Megadeth, Vulgar Display of Power by Pantera, Angel Dust by Faith No More, The Chronic by Dr. Dre, Blues for the Red Sun by Caius, and the debut album from Rage Against the Machine. On television, we saw the debuts of Batman the Animated Series, The Real World, The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, The Larry Sanders Show, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Mad About You, X-Men, and the launch of Cartoon Network. But all this paled in comparison to what was happening in the World Wrestling Federation. With Hulk Hogan announcing his indefinite hiatus, the top spot in the company was ripe for the picking. With a roster shakeup due to allegations of steroid usage, a new crop of talent rose to prominence to usher in the new generation. Join us on this trip as we journey back to 1992. The 1992 30-man Royal Rumble match is considered the greatest in company history. It featured the cream of the crop in terms of talent, all vying for the vacant WWF Championship. WWF President Jack Tunney gave former champions Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker an advantage, allowing them to draw numbers between 20 to 30. Nature Boy Ric Flair entered at number 3, lasting the remainder of the match. Opposing him in the end were Hulk Hogan and Sid Justice, who'd established a friendship last summer. But the Royal Rumble match is every man for himself, so it shouldn't have come as a surprise to Hogan when Sid tossed him over the top rope, eliminating him. Wide-eyed and dumbfounded, Hulk Hogan stared back at Sid. Sid cackled until Hogan grabbed his arm and began to pull him over the ropes. Flair snuck up behind Sid to give him one last push to secure a victory. Backstage, WWF President Jack Tunney presented Flair with the WWF Championship. With Bobby the Brain Heenan and Mr. Perfect by his side, Flair said, "With a tear in my eye, this is the greatest day in my life." Meanwhile, Hogan and Sid still argued in the ring, with a slew of officials holding them apart. The February 1st Superstars featured a press conference to announce the number 1 contender to the WWF Championship at WrestleMania 8. Seated at the head of the room were the top contenders: Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, Sid Justice, Rowdy Roddy Piper, and The Undertaker. WWF President Jack Tunney made the historic announcement that Hulk Hogan would receive the title shot. Meanwhile, Sid was visibly angry, even cutting a scathing promo on Hogan after the press conference. February 8th, Saturday night's main event, featured Hogan and Sid teaming together, opposing the team of WWF Champion Nature Boy Ric Flair and The Undertaker. Sid cut a promo before the bout, explaining that the fans merely misunderstood him, and things are fine between he and Hogan. Despite this, Sid's true feelings were soon revealed. As Hogan fought off the champion and the dead man, Sid began to become jealous of Hogan hogging the ring. The tides turned, and Hogan needed to tag out, with Sid making no effort to tag in. Just as Hogan was within arm's reach, Sid drops from the apron, leaving Hogan to the wolves. Hogan would go on to win by disqualification, as Flair and The Undertaker orchestrated a vicious beatdown. The following day on Wrestling Challenge, Sid was a guest on Brutus the Barber Beefcake's barber shop. Beefcake asked Sid to explain himself, which put Sid into a frenzy. Sid would destroy the set of the barber shop, putting an end to the segment. Hogan had an issue to settle that was more important than the championship. Thus, the announcement was made on the February 15th Superstars that Hogan would no longer receive his WWF Championship match at WrestleMania 8. Instead, Hogan would receive an opportunity to get his hands on Sid. Sid had a big night on February 23rd in Madison Square Garden. Not only did he debut Harvey Whippleman as his manager, but he'd also win a 20-man battle royal, eliminating Hulk Hogan. Sid would continue his reign of terror on the March 14th Superstars. After defeating an enhancement talent, Sid continued to pummel his opponent senseless. The enhancement talent was stretchered out, but Sid wasn't finished. Sid would put a bandana on the talent and push the stretcher down the aisle and into the side of the ring. It was no wonder that Hulk Hogan announced on the April 4th Superstars that he'd be taking some time off following WrestleMania 8. In a sit-down interview with Vince McMahon, Hogan admitted that he wasn't sure when his next match would be. Hogan vs. Sid would headline WrestleMania 8 in the Hoosier Dome, ending in controversial fashion. Papa Shango emerged from the entrance, running in to attack Hogan and cause a disqualification. To the surprise of everyone, the Ultimate Warrior made his return, coming to the aid of Hogan and clearing the ring of Sid and Shango. Pyro went off around the ring as Hogan and Warrior celebrated to close out the show. The February 8th Saturday night's main event featured the final confrontation between Jake the Snake Roberts and the Macho Man Randy Savage. These two delivered another rough and tough brawl, with Savage hitting a flying elbow drop to win the match. Savage continued the beatdown post-match, bringing out a slew of officials. Despite officials begging Savage to come down from the top rope, he leapt over them and hit another flying elbow drop onto Roberts. While Savage gained the victory, Roberts was planning to get the last laugh. Roberts slithered up the aisle and waited behind the entrance curtain, chair in hand. Savage and Elizabeth made their way through the curtain, and Roberts swung the chair. Before the chair could make contact, The Undertaker pulled it back and stared a hole into Roberts. Not one to be intimidated, Roberts was Paul Bearer's guest on the funeral parlor on the February 29th Superstars. Just as Roberts laid his hands on Bearer, The Undertaker emerged. Amidst the carnage, Roberts slammed the casket lid shut on Undertaker's hand, trapping the dead man. Roberts would deliver a DDT to Bearer, while Undertaker struggled to free himself from under the tremendous pressure of the casket lid. With no relief in sight, Undertaker dragged the casket with him towards Roberts, who retreated to the back. While Jake the Snake delivered another epic pre-match promo at WrestleMania 8, he was no match for The Undertaker. Taker beat Roberts from pillar to post, even tombstoning him on the floor. The end came quickly, with Undertaker scoring the pinfall and racking up a second WrestleMania victory. This would be the last time we would see Jake the Snake Roberts in a WWF ring for some time. WWF Champion Nature Boy Ric Flair would face Macho Man Randy Savage at WrestleMania 8 as part of the double main event. It wouldn't take long for Flair to begin his mind games on the road to WrestleMania. On the March 14th Superstars, Flair made a shocking claim, saying that he dated Elizabeth before Savage did. To add insult to injury, Flair had photos published in the WWF magazine of he and Elizabeth from back in the day. Not only was Savage irate, but so was Elizabeth. On the March 29th March to Mania special, Vince McMahon interviewed Elizabeth, who denied all claims of ever dating Flair. At April 5th's WrestleMania 8, WWF Champion Nature Boy Ric Flair threatened to reveal a photo of Elizabeth that would really make the Macho Man angry. Flair's executive consultant, Mr. Perfect, guarded the enlarged photo, which would only be revealed if Flair won. Unfortunately for Flair, Savage arrived more intense than ever. What ensued was an absolute classic, featuring two of the all-time greats. Savage clawed at Flair's forehead, opening a cut. Perfect assisted Flair, laying in shots on Savage behind the referee's back. After Flair used brass knuckles and Perfect used a chair, Elizabeth had seen enough. Officials urged her to leave the ringside area, but she continued to cheer for Savage. After both giving it their all, Savage managed to roll up a bloody Flair, hook the tights, and score the pinfall victory. Macho Man Randy Savage was WWF Champion for a second time. Post-match, Flair yelled at Elizabeth and eventually kissed her. She proceeded to slap him, with Savage going berserk. Officials pried Savage and Flair apart, with a multitude having to restrain the Macho Man. Backstage, Sean Mooney interviewed Flair, Perfect, and an anxious Bobby the Brain Heenan. Perfect and Heenan argued that Savage cheated by hooking the tights, while Flair delivered a classic promo believing that Savage couldn't beat him again. Meanwhile, Mean Gene Okerlund interviewed the new WWF champion, Macho Man Randy Savage, and Elizabeth. Savage delivered an intense promo, saying he's going to get his hands on Flair again. The photos that Flair was flaunting around were proven to be fake on the April 18th Superstars. The original photos of Savage and Elizabeth surfaced, proving that Flair hired someone to doctor the photos. On the May 5th Superstars, Savage issued a challenge to Flair. The two would square off on June 2nd in Ottawa with the WWF Championship on the line. In the end, Mr. Perfect was caught helping Flair cheat, leading to a disqualification. This issue was once again left unsettled. The year featured numerous debuts and returns. The February 1st Superstars featured the in-ring debut of Tatanka. It was also on this episode that the debut vignette for Papa Shango aired. Shango would make his in-ring debut the following week. WWF Tag Team Champions the Legion of Doom introduced fans to their manager, Paul Ellering, at WrestleMania 8. We'd also see the debut of Lex Luger, who appeared via satellite to announce his involvement in Vince McMahon's short-lived World Bodybuilding Federation. The April 18th Superstars featured a vignette for the returning Crush. Crush embraced his Hawaiian heritage, sporting long blonde hair and colorful ring gear. He'd make his in-ring return on the May 9th Superstars. Nails made his shocking debut on the May 30th Superstars, naturally attacking the Big Boss Man. He was dubbed as an ex-convict with a desire for revenge on his former prison guard. Bossman was the recipient of a brutal beatdown, putting him out of action for several months. Nails would make his in-ring debut 2 weeks later on Superstars. Vignettes began airing in June for the man oozing machismo, Razor Ramon. Razor was seen harassing waiters, women, and innocent bystanders as he lived in a world he believed was his own. Ramon made his in-ring debut on the August 8th Superstars and quickly began his legendary career. On the October 3rd Superstars, former WWF champion Bob Backlund announced he'd be making a comeback. He'd make his in-ring return on the November 28th Superstars, kickstarting his campaign towards a title shot. From the Cosmos, Max Moon made his debut on the October 10th Superstars. The Halloween edition of Superstars featured the debut of Yokozuna. Managed by Mr. Fuji, the man weighing over 500 pounds moved across the ring with the greatest of ease. He finished opponents off with the Banzai Drop, leaping from the second rope, slamming his weight down on his opponent's chest. The Halloween edition of Superstars also featured a vignette hyping the return of Bam Bam Bigelow. Bigelow would make his in-ring return on the November 28th Superstars. Also lurking in the crowd on Halloween was Doink, an evil clown that enjoyed playing pranks on just about everybody. On the November 7th Superstars, Wild Samoan Afa made his return, managing a new tag team. His team consisted of two agile big men known as the Head Shrinkers, Fatu and Samu. The December 12th Superstars featured Bobby the Brain Heenan, introducing us to the newest member of the broadcast team. Jerry the King Lawler, donning a crown and cape, sat in on commentary and boasted his importance to the wrestling world. Rick and Scott, the Steiner brothers, made their debut on the December 21st Primetime Wrestling, appearing via satellite. The Michigan State athletes would compete in a WWF ring the following year. The issue between the Rockers came to a head on the January 12th Wrestling Challenge. The site was the Barber Shop, with Brutus the Barber Beefcake questioning whether the team was on the verge of breaking up. Both Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty discussed their differences, but were willing to put it all aside for the sake of the team. The two hugged it out and raised one another's arms. Then, it happened. In one of the most shocking moments in the history of the company, Michaels super-kicked Jannetty. He followed that up by dragging Jannetty up by the hair and ramming him through the glass of the barber shop window. A bloody Jannetty winced in pain on the floor as Michaels ripped up a magazine featuring an article on the Rockers. Michaels underwent a complete character change, adopting a cocky persona. Mr. Perfect dubbed him as the wrestler of the 90s. He was now the Heartbreak Kid, and his legacy had just begun. On the February 1st Superstars, Sensational Sherry appeared on the funeral parlor. She announced that she was in love with Michaels. 2 weeks later, Sherry debuted at the side of Michaels, adding to an already hot act. Sherry would accompany Michaels to the ring with a mirror, which the Heartbreak Kid would gaze into to adjust his hair. The Heartbreak Kid was on fire, finding himself across the ring from some big-name opponents. Michaels defeated El Matador Tito Santana at WrestleMania 8 in an above-average bout. From there, Michaels faced WWF champion Macho Man Randy Savage on the April 19th UK Rampage tour. On July 20th in Worcester, Mass., Michaels teamed with Nature Boy Ric Flair to face WWF champion Macho Man Randy Savage and WWF Intercontinental champion Bret Hitman Hart. Michaels spent the summer feuding with the model Rick Martel. Martel and Sherry traded winks, infuriating Michaels and leading to a match at SummerSlam. Sherry convinced the two not to punch one another in the face, but they broke that rule rather quickly. This led to Sherry fainting and the two fighting over who would carry her to medical attention. The match was ruled a no contest, with Sherry leaving with the Heartbreak Kid. Sherry held the mirror high for Michaels on the Halloween edition of Superstars. Shockingly, Marty Jannetty returned, hopping the guardrail and sneaking up behind Michaels. Michaels saw Jannetty's reflection and turned around, receiving a world-class beatdown. Jannetty grabbed the mirror and swung it at Michaels. In an act of cowardice, Michaels pulled Sherry in front of him, with the mirror shattering over her face. Jannetty's heart sank as the Heartbreak Kid snuck out of the ring and left up the aisle. Sherry was helped away by officials. Jannetty faced Papa Shango on the December 21st Primetime Wrestling. Michaels made his way to ringside, seeking attention. Jannetty attacked Michaels, getting counted out. The two brawled, with officials separating them. We'd have to wait until the new year for a match between the two. In a shocking turn of events, the Mountie defeated Bret Hitman Hart at a house show on January 18th. That meant that heading into the Royal Rumble, the Mountie was the new WWF Intercontinental Champion. His first title defense would be against Rowdy Roddy Piper. Piper put a quick ending to the Mountie's title reign, putting him out with a sleeper hold. The new WWF Intercontinental Champion was Rowdy Roddy Piper. Piper used the shock stick on an unconscious Mountie following the bout. The Mountie was granted a rematch on the February 8th Saturday night's main event with a plan in mind. With the referee preoccupied, the Mountie used the shock stick on Piper. Oddly, Piper wasn't fazed, and he managed to pick up a victory. Following the bout, Piper revealed he was wearing a shock-proof vest under his t-shirt. Piper went on to defend his championship against the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels on the March 29th March to WrestleMania. The out-of-control Piper got himself disqualified, with the Hitman coming to the ring to calm down the hot rod. Piper yelled at Hart to mind his own business. The stage was set for WrestleMania 8 in Indianapolis. Mean Gene Okerlund conducted an interview backstage with WWF Intercontinental Champion Rowdy Roddy Piper and challenger Bret Hitman Hart prior to the bout. Piper discussed his love for the Hart family, but none of that mattered tonight. The bout was excellent, with Hart resilient as ever. There was a referee bump, which put a wicked thought into Piper's mind. Piper grabbed the ring bell and raised it over a bloody Hart. The crowd expressed their distaste, audible enough for Piper to have second thoughts. Piper threw the bell aside and locked in a sleeper hold. Hart kicked off the ropes, rolled on top of Piper, and scored a pinfall victory. Bret Hart was now a two-time WWF Intercontinental Champion. Following the bout, the two shook hands. With the Intercontinental Championship back around his waist, Hart moved on to a feud with the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels. The two battled in Syracuse on April 29th and again on June 2nd in Ottawa. Things came to a head on July 21st in Portland in the first ever ladder match. The WWF Intercontinental Championship hung high from a rope above the ring. Victory was attained by climbing the ladder, set up outside, and pulling the belt off the rope. Hart and Michaels bruised one another with the 8-foot steel ladder. In the end, Hart was victorious, climbing the ladder and yanking the championship off the rope for a big victory. Hart's next challenge was his most emotional to date. It was announced that SummerSlam would emanate from Wembley Stadium in London, England. The number one contender to the Intercontinental Championship was the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, getting his shot in his home country. Bulldog happened to be Hart's brother-in-law, with the family distressed over the announcement of the match. Over 80,000 fans witnessed a technical masterpiece that became an instant classic. After a highly competitive bout, Bulldog reversed a sunset flip and scored the pinfall to become the new WWF Intercontinental Champion. Following the match, Bulldog's wife Diana entered the ring. With tears in her eyes, she hugged her husband and her brother Bret. Bulldog, Diana, and Bret raised one another's arms as pyro went off in the background to end one of SummerSlam's all-time greatest moments. Bulldog's reign came to a screeching halt on the November 14th Saturday night's main event. The Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels was the better man this evening, using a foreign object on Bulldog to secure a victory. The new WWF Intercontinental Champion was the Heartbreak Kid. This was Bulldog's final appearance with the company for some time. Following WrestleMania 8, Papa Shango was irate after his confrontation with the Ultimate Warrior. On the May 9th Superstars, Shango put a curse on Warrior, burning a picture of him. The following week, Warrior was in action on Superstars. During the bout, Warrior clenched his stomach and collapsed off the apron. The May 23rd Superstars featured an interview with Warrior on the stage. He brushed off rumors of a curse until a mysterious black ooze began to pour from his forehead. The following week, Shango was in action against an enhancement talent. During the bout, Shango caused his opponent's boots to go up in flames, further proof of his strange powers. Warrior and Shango would clash on house shows across the country, but there never was a big blow-off bout to end the feud. Warrior was interviewed on the August 8th Superstars, hyping his bout with Macho Man Randy Savage at SummerSlam. Flair interrupted the segment, revealing to Warrior that he'd seen Savage talking with Mr. Perfect. Further complicating the situation, Savage was interviewed on the August 15th Superstars. His interview was interrupted by Mr. Perfect, who claimed that he made Warrior an offer he couldn't refuse. Regardless, Savage and Warrior teamed up to face the Nasty Boys on the August 23rd SummerSlam Spectacular. Warrior accidentally knocked out the referee, leading to interference by Flair and Perfect. Warrior was the recipient of a brutal beatdown while the Nasty Boys put the boots to Savage. The referee awoke and counted out Savage, giving the Nasty Boys a big victory. Later in the show, Warrior blamed Savage for the entire beatdown and loss. Both WWF champion Macho Man Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior were paranoid heading into their SummerSlam bout. That paranoia hurt the bout and led to a less than favorable outcome. Savage was the recipient of an attack orchestrated by Flair and Perfect. Warrior was victorious by countout and ran off the devious Flair and Perfect. Savage remained the champion. Backstage, Flair decreed that the title shot should have been his. The $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase and IRS formed Money Inc. and made their debut on the February 22nd Superstars. Less than 1 week later, they were the new WWF Tag Team Champions, defeating the Legion of Doom. LOD needed to regroup, enlisting the aid of their mentor, Paul Ellering. Ellering didn't come empty-handed, joined by his wise-talking ventriloquist dummy, Rocco. Hawk, Animal, Ellering, and Rocco drove to the ring at SummerSlam on motorcycles. LOD laid a beatdown to Money Inc., obtaining their revenge. Unfortunately for LOD, Money Inc. had lost their titles to the Natural Disasters on July 20th in Worcester. It wasn't until the Halloween edition of Superstars that Money Inc. would get their rematch. Prior to the bout, the Nasty Boys confronted Money Inc., asking for a title shot if they regained the gold. Money Inc. was less than receptive, with the Nasties attacking them and becoming fan favorites. Later in the broadcast, Money Inc. reclaimed the WWF Tag Team Championships, defeating the Natural Disasters. Jimmy Hart joined Money Inc. as their new manager and enlisted the help of the Head Shrinkers to secure the victory. Following the bout, the Nasty Boys got their hands on Jimmy Hart and tossed him off the stage and onto Money Inc. Nature Boy Ric Flair regained the WWF Championship from Macho Man Randy Savage on the September 1st Primetime Wrestling. Savage's knee was injured prior to the bout, falling victim to an attack from Razor Ramon. Flair and Ramon formed an alliance, with Mr. Perfect and Bobby the Brain Heenan pulling the strings in the background. On the September 19th Superstars, Macho Man Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior formed an alliance. Known as the Ultimate Maniacs, the team issued a challenge to Flair and Ramon for Survivor Series. The Ultimate Maniacs had a warm-up bout against WWF Tag Team Champions Money Inc. on the November 14th Saturday night's main event. Working as a cohesive unit, the Maniacs won by countout, with Money Inc. walking away at their own will. Savage and Warrior chased them up the ramp, but were met by a premeditated attack by Flair and Ramon. In a shocking twist, the Ultimate Warrior was released from the company. On the November 16th Primetime Wrestling, Savage was in search of a new partner. In an unpredictable move, Savage asked Mr. Perfect to join him against Flair and Ramon. Perfect laughed it off with Heenan, both of which were sitting at the primetime panel. But after some consideration, Perfect accepted Savage's offer. An irate Heenan slapped Perfect across the face. Perfect grabbed Heenan by the tie and poured a pitcher of water over his head. That weekend on Superstars, an enraged Flair and Ramon cut a promo on Savage and Perfect, hyping the big match at Survivor Series. Survivor Series took place on November 25th, and Mr. Perfect was ready for his return to the ring. Joining Macho Man Randy Savage, they rivaled Nature Boy Ric Flair and Razor Ramon. Perfect showed some signs of ring rust, which made him question whether he was a suitable partner or not. The crowd jeered as Perfect left Savage on his own and began to walk up the aisle. Flair and Ramon double-teamed Savage, leading to an eventual disqualification. Perfect returned to the ring with a chair, swinging it wildly at Flair and Ramon and clearing the ring. Perfect helped Savage to his feet and raised his arm in victory. After dodging the sword of the Berserker, the August 15th Superstars featured a confrontation in the aisle between The Undertaker and the Ugandan giant Kamala. The two would face off at SummerSlam, with the bout ending in a disqualification. This led to the announcement of the first ever coffin match. The first person to stuff the loser into the coffin and hammer the lid shut would be declared the winner. Paul Bearer rolled a coffin to the ring on the September 19th Superstars, nearly scaring Kamala out of his loincloth. Survivor Series came, with the coffin proving to be too much for the Ugandan giant. The Undertaker emerged victorious, rolling an unconscious Kamala into the coffin and hammering the lid shut. It was a feel-good moment in Saskatoon on the night of October 12th. WWF champion Nature Boy Ric Flair defended his title against Bret Hitman Hart. Nobody expected how relentless Hart would be, fighting tooth and nail in front of his home country. Hart locked in the sharpshooter and made Flair submit. The crowd roared as Hart was crowned the new WWF champion. On the October 17th Superstars, Hart declared to Mean Gene that the championship was proof that even the biggest dreams can come true. Hart wasted no time defending the title, defeating Papa Shango on the November 14th Saturday Night's Main Event and Virgil on the November 21st Superstars. Also riding a sea of momentum was new WWF Intercontinental Champion, the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels. Michaels confronted Hart at the end of the November 14th Saturday Night's Main Event. The confrontation was the impetus for the main event of the Survivor Series. Hart and Michaels put on a classic, with Hart picking up a victory via the sharpshooter. Following the bout, Santa Claus came to the ring and made it snow in the arena. Hart and Santa celebrated to end the show. Mean Gene caught up with Ric Flair in a fancy restaurant on the December 5th Superstars. Flair proclaimed that Hart's days were numbered as champion. The following week on Superstars, Mean Gene interviewed Hart on the stage. Flair and Heenan interrupted the interview, with Razor Ramon sneaking up behind the champion. Hart was outnumbered and in a bad situation. Luckily, Mr. Perfect rushed to the stage to save the day. How long would the Hitman hold on to the WWF Championship in the new year? Find out next time on Squared Circle History.